What up? Can somebody let me know if you can hear me? Because I don't know if you can hear me with my headphones on. If not, then I'll take them out. You can hear me? Cool. So let's pray in and just close our eyes for a second and take a deep breath in. And God, we just thank you for this group tonight and allowing us to do this, and just thank you for being in our lives and in our circles, and just allowing us to build a relationship and communicate with you. Separate me from pride and ego and arrogance, and allow me to do your work. Just allow us to encounter and have a relationship and all that comes with it with you. Please do your work in and through me, and allow me to carry your message and not my own. Amen. So I had a really cool day, man, and so I just shoot straight at it. I end up coming to work, and I'm currently at work, and I get to do this at work. What an amazing gift to be able to do that, and the kids I work with are watching in the other house, and it's just an amazing process. So I get into work, and I get a call. Earlier today, I got a message on Facebook from a friend of mine that I had messaged because I had a 9-step to do, and I owed this person an amends. And I'll let you know. So April 15th, 2015, I was released, and for the first time ever since I was 14, I got released out of prison, and I didn't have any probation or anything, and it was just the first time that I experienced freedom, and that's all I thought I wanted. And I was me and this girl were having a relationship, and April 18th, I remember I don't know why, I just was feeling down and out, and the phenomenon of the mental phenomenon of just getting out, and the restless, irritable, discontented anxiety was all there, and I was I knew how to escape from that. And even though I had every experience, I told myself this insane lie, we already been discussing, and this trivial excuse came up of, well, you're not on probation anymore. You ain't got to worry about that, And I talked to the girl next door, who's also a friend of mine, and she went to Camden, got some dope, and I got 2 bags. And I remember I had it April 18th, and the girl I was with just lost her man before me to an overdose in her house. And so I got this dope, and I'm not using it, and she knew me as a dealer. She didn't know Addict Matt. And so April 18th, she left, went to work, and there was no use before that. It was my first time using that in this round of using. It was my first time using in her house, and since I've been home. And I remember I used, and I just remember, I think it was this watch actually, and I was going like this, and I was tapping my watch, and my watch had stopped, and I was smacking my watch, and I was like, what the heck is wrong with my watch? And that was the reality of it. And then all of a sudden I woke up, and there's EMTs all over the place, and she's crying, and you hear people yelling downstairs, and they're just all amazed, looking at me with this unbelief look. And I was like, what's going on? And I thought that was the dream. The dream was me tapping my watch because my watch had my ticker stopped. Wow. And then so the people around me, I thought that was the dream, but that was reality. I had OD, and I was dead. And I remember talking to the guy that from next door who ran over there and all this stuff, and they were like, "Dude, you were gone." Like they were about to bag you up. They were telling us to get out of there to bag you up. And April 18th, I'm found dead in her house. You know what I mean? So she had no inclination of what's going on. So I knew I owed her an amends. So the last few times I was home, one of the times I was home, I actually went out to make an amends to the EMTs because they woke me up 2 weeks later in the same house, but this time in her bathroom. And she had kids in the house and all that stuff. And so I went out and I called her and I was like, "Hey, Randy, listen, you know the EMTs that woke me up, like which department was it?" And she's like, "Why? What's up?" And I'm telling her why, because I want to go and see these people. And I went to make an amends, and she told me she gave me some information or whatever, and I was going to find these people, and then she called me. And she said, "Matt, I have to tell you something about that day." And I was like, "What's up?" And she said, when I got in the car, my mom came to pick me up for work. I got in the car, she started to drive me to work. And she said, "Something told me to go back and check on you." Now, mind you, there's no using. She has no reason to believe that anything is wrong or anything. And she said, "Something," I know what that something is today, thank you. "Something told me to go back and check on you." And she came back, the door was locked. She kicked the door in, found me gone. She's just like trying to give me breath and CPR. And, she called the ambulance. There was no pulse, all that stuff. And, and yet I'm here. And the cool part was, like, I did go and make an amends and stuff like that to the EMTs, which was like an amazing experience. But I didn't get to see her personally, and like in our lineage, we kind of like try to do the personal face-to-face amend thing. So I never got to see her, so I kept reaching out to her every time I got home to face her. But the coolest thing was her calling me and letting me know that God was in my life before I ever knew He was in my life. Before I was ever willing to accept Him, before I ever wanted to acknowledge that power, He was there. Man, telling her, "Go back and check on me. I'm not done with him yet." Man. So I get to work today, and she called me. She just got the message on Facebook from the last time I was home. And she called me. And I said, "Hey, and I want to do the face-to-face thing, but we're like Corona, and I don't know. You never know." So I was like, "Okay, I'm just going to do this. I've been trying to do it." So I told her, I said, "Look, there's some things I want to talk to you about." And I listed my harms, and I'm like, "Listen, I like OD, and your kids are in there. Like, I stole your stuff, and like I was completely disrespectful and selfish and self-centered, and like just wanted it to be about me and all that stuff." And I also asked her, how did that affect you? And she was just like, "It still affects me. It still affects me." And she was just like, "Man," and she told me the whole scene because I was gone. And she told me how she was just crying, like beating on my chest. And just trying to save me, and calling the ambulance, and like the EMTs are like pulling the stuff out and giving up, And she was like, "I'm not," and she ran past the cops and all that stuff and just started beating on my chest and stuff. And it was just a beautiful thing, man, to be able to make an amends. And she's just like, "I'm just so happy that you're alive, and I watch you on Facebook and stuff, and I look at your pictures, and it's just like the most amazing thing for me to like just see you smiling." And like that stuff, man, I'm telling you, like, she got kids in there, like, the harm that you cause people, you really don't know. And And that's like a lot of what we're talking about is God, and like how God comes in and like we're trying to let go, and that's just the bottom line. I'm trying to let go. So last week we were talking about, we went over that was just the cool stuff. So last week we went over the bedevilments, and we're like in agnostics, and we're kind of like talking about how it's just really not like a cool thing to be an agnostic, and the suggestion was to watch a movie. I even gave you a name of a movie or whatever movie floats your boat that just sparks that thing inside of you. And there's nothing to it that can identify that feeling. There's no form of science that can tell you what that is, and that's like the God spot. It tells me like, yo, man, oh, this is wrong. When I watch a particular movie and I start to choke up or I start to cry, and there's like something inside of me, and I'm just like, man, and I can relate, and then we got stuff like love, which we're going to talk about, and all that, and all these good things that are coming up. So on page 53, we put a line. It's right toward the middle of the page. We had the second step 2 question, which is when we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. That's it, man. Like you either willing to believe that we're moving from step 2 into step 3 thing, where step 2, I'm willing to try this thing because no human power has been able to help me, and to step 3 where like I'm trying to build a relationship with this power. God either is or he isn't. It's just that simple. What's your choice to be? And that's the second step 2 question. You either going to accept that there's God or there's not. And then we got a lot of evidence that we're about to embark on about people like changing their mind and changing our perspective on stuff. And that's what it really is. Like we think that a theory or something happens, and we look at it and everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's factual, it's science. And then 2 years later, another scientist comes and finds out that's not factual and that's wrong information. Here's the right one. And we'll quickly switch from, this guy's right, and just completely change our belief from where it was to what it is now. And we've done it thousands of times. So why can't, and this is what we're talking about, why can't I do that with the God idea? So arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted. We're on page 53, middle of the page, toward the bottom, the last 2 paragraphs. Arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of faith. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked over the bridge of reason, capital B, capital R, toward the desired shore of faith. The outlines and the promise of the new land had brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits. Oh my gosh, that's my experience. I'm so happy. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's new life, man. I got new life, man. Friendly hands had stretched out and welcome. We tell people all the time in sponsorship, and people that you sponsor, like they think like this is just some type of game or some stuff that we're trying to do, and even though like they don't see that we're not trying to get anything from it, like we want you over on, we're trying to invite you to the world of the spirit, man, to like some unbelievable feelings where I'm okay no matter what happens. We're trying to invite you into the most amazing life you'll ever have. Yet we were grateful that reason had brought us so far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we didn't like to lose our support. That was natural, but let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? For did we not believe in our own reasoning? Didn't you believe in yourself and whatever you thought, I don't need to do that because I just don't need to do it. And then found out that you needed to do it, but we're always like stuck in our own reasoning. Did we not have confidence in our ability to think, I can think my way through this? What was that but a sword of faith? I got this. That's having faith in myself. Before something happens, I got this. Yes, we had been faithful, objectively faithful to the God of reason. So, in one way or another, we discovered that faith had been involved the whole time. It's been there the whole time. We found, too, that we had been worshipers. What a state of mental goose flesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, women, drugs, money, sentiment, things, and ourselves. And then, with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? Who of us had not loved something or somebody? How much did these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with pure reason? Little or nothing we saw at last. Let me explain. Crystal and Lachette, man. That was my fiance. It was my significant other. We came down to Florida together. We had this, like, it was a complete worship and a love, man. Like a love. Now, Crystal was arrogant. She didn't want to work, right? In the beginning, she didn't want to like have a job. She was just like real, like that's my baby, man. Just like a arrogant woman, man. And like she, we would always argue and stuff, and she always had her way. If it's not my way, then get out, type of stuff, And if you put, but I loved her. I loved her with all my heart. Right? And if you could put this supermodel woman, whatever woman on the planet, the most beautiful woman on the planet, you put her in front of me. She has a job, she has money, she has all these things, right? She's good, she cooks, right? She cleans, all that stuff, right? And then all your friends even are like, yo, like you need to, what are you doing? Like you got this, and I'm sure some of y'all heard it, men, women, and all, and the like, oh man, this guy like really likes you and he's a good guy, but we're attached and in love with this knucklehead and don't want to listen to none of that. And everyone's like, yo man, like you should be with her or you should be with him. And yet we're in love with this other person who is a complete nuisance at times. And you grab this woman who's perfect and all reason and would say, yo, you need to be with her. Yet I love Crystal. So if I'm even with her, I had an experience with her, she does all this stuff, everything's great. Let Crystal walk in the room and see where that girl, that beautiful girl with everything is at. I'll holler back at you. You have to go, And there's nothing that can explain that. There's no science that can explain our love for people or how we feel this feeling. There's no, like, oh, well, you feel this because they can come up with some theories, but it's, Anyway, how much of these feelings, these worships, have to do with pure reason, little or nothing we saw at last? Were not these things out of the tissue, not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these things, after all, determine our course of existence? It was impossible to say that we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we have been living by faith and little else. Faith comes from the word fidelis, which means loyalty, Greek. Imagine life without faith. Were nothing left but pure reason, it wouldn't be life. But we believed in life, of course we did. We could not prove life in the sense that we could prove a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, yet there it was. Could we still say that the whole thing is nothing but a mass of electrons created out of nothing, meaning nothing, and whirling into a destiny of nothingness? Of course we could. The electrons themselves are more intelligent than that. At least so the chemist said. So obviously he's done some research. Hence we saw that reason isn't everything. Neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable, though it emanates from our best minds. What about people who proved that men could never fly? Remember them? You know, men's never going to fly, and they had reason, they had a justifiable reason, they mathematically proved it, and then all of a sudden we flew. So the whole thing is, this whole thing is about moving from my idea of this, I don't know about this God thing, into, okay, let's move into this God thing. Because how can all these people be wrong? And I'm right, you know? I'm right and everybody's wrong. And this guy told me, I remember being locked up, and it was my first time of really looking at things like this. And I was locked up, and I was locked up on a tier with lifers in V building down Smyrna prison. And it was Keith and Butch. And we got into this altercation. Let me just say that. It was an altercation over the shower. And it was like, yo, you ain't next in the shower. I was like, yeah, I am next in the shower. And we got into this big fight, right? It was a brawl. So after that brawl, they called me into the cell the next day. And now it's 4 of them. That's Keith, Butch, Will, and Tuna. And they're all in the cell, and they're all lifers. All of them got 20 plus in already. They've been bitten the whole time. And Keith says, yo, come here. And I was like, oh, man, here we go again. Nah, man, I'm good. And he's like, man, just come in the cell. So I went in there. And he said, Matt, how long you been in prison? And I was like, I had to think about it. And I was like, 3 or 4 years now. And I was like 22 years old. And he said, how many fights you been in? And I thought about it. And I really tried to think about it. And I was just like, I couldn't come up with a number. I was in a fight every other day. And I was just like, and I answered him honestly. I said, I don't know. And he said, I've been in jail 22 years and I haven't been in any fights. Is it you or is it everybody else? And I was like, oh my God, it's gotta be me. And I really thought about that, and it really clicked to me. I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know anybody else that gets in the amount of trouble and the amount of altercations that I got into, incarcerated on top of it, and not even on the street. We're talking about even in the prison. I'm getting in more altercations than I know anybody else to be in. Anybody. And I really thought about it, and I was like, oh my God, it's got to be me. Everybody else can't be wrong, and I'm the only one right. When everybody's telling me, and I always had an excuse. Well, it's because he was saying this, or he was picking on, you know, and I always had an excuse. But the truth is, I always involved myself in stuff I ain't had no business involving myself with. Yet, we have been seeing another kind of flight. A spiritual liberation from this world. People who rose above their problems. They said that God, and this is what I will tell you. I will tell you that God made these things possible, and they only smiled, right? We only smiled about it. God made that possible for her to freaking, to get a feeling of, let me go back and check on him. Nothing else could have done that. That's just the bottom line of it. We said that God made these things possible, and we only smiled. We had seen spiritual release, but like to tell ourselves it just wasn't so. Actually, we were fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. Let me prove it. Let me prove it to you. And I did this event on one of my friends' page or whatever. They had some type of event, some unity event, and I spoke a little bit about this. And this is just the honest to God truth. And deep down in every man, woman, and child, including yourself, is the fundamental idea of God. So I'll give you an example. My dad had the gray thing. He had money in the gray thing. I knew it was there. I went to go pluck some money out of it, and everything in me said, don't do that. I was a thief by trade. I'm a thief. So everything in me said, don't do that. Don't take that money. And the consequences didn't matter. Now, let me give you more detail. I hated my dad growing up. I didn't like him the slightest bit. In my mind, I had every possible reason and excuse and justification to take anything from him. Anything. So, being as though I hated him and I'll take anything from him, and my mind tells me, yo, you can do that. Yet, why when I go and get the 20 or go to steal something inside, internally, says, don't do that. Remember that feeling? Rather you were stealing something, rather you were doing something you knew you wasn't supposed to be doing, a place that you knew you ain't had no business being in. And I'm talking about as a kid. As a kid, I heard it a lot more than I do now. It was loud, almost audible. It was actually like a loud voice back then, you know. Now it's like a little louder today, not louder than it was then, but like I can hear it today. And then we just ignored the feeling, like, oh, and yet you got this gut feeling of shame, guilt. Oh my gosh, why did I do that? You know, and what is that? That's God. It's God consciousness. People used to call it our conscience. If you heard that voice that told you don't do that, that was your conscience telling you not to do it. But then again, on the other part of things, if you told somebody you heard voices, they would have told you was a nutcase. And you might need to see some mental health doctors because you're hearing voices. But the truth is, that voice was always telling me what to do and what not to do. It was. It told us even then. I remember, and another example was, you know, I'm not going to do that. I'll leave that alone because this isn't my group and anybody can watch this. So I'll leave that one alone. But we had that feeling. That feeling told us like what to do and what not to do. And that was God. And then we continued to do it so many times over and over again that eventually that feeling, we just ignored it and pushed it off and pushed it deep down inside us and told us it wasn't so. And then we would sit there and years later now, like when it does come up, it's easily pushed to the side, or we just didn't hear it no more. It just got more and more quiet as the years went on, and we continued to do what we wanted to do and stuck in selfish and self-centered ways and ignored God consciousness and decided that I'm going to do it this way. Even though it is me, but it ain't me, it's God that's telling me, yo, don't do this. I say I'm going to do it anyway and end up doing it, and I feel horrible. It's the best way I can describe God in you deep down inside, in every man, woman, and child, you know. It may be obscured by calamity, right? Some stuff that happened to you. By pomp, by worship of other things, right? It might be obscured by all that stuff. But in some form or another, it was there. For faith and a power greater than ourselves, and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. God does what a human can't do, man. That's it. You know, he's always been there, always trying to guide us, always guiding us with our feelings and our gut and our hearts and our minds, you know. And yet I would always tell myself it isn't so. Although I see miraculous demonstrations like my friend Pete, like I see my friend Chris, who like every doctor on the planet was like, it's over, let it go. They're done, they're dead. And yet they're here. They're breathing, they're walking, they're talking, and they live like we do, you know. Unbelievable. I've seen miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives and in my own life. And they're facts as old as man himself. This thing's been occurring since early times, man. You know, look at the Bible, look wherever you need to look. God's been doing his work all along. But we like to tell ourselves it isn't so. We finally saw that faith. Remember, faith, fidelis, loyalty, and some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as we have a feeling for a friend. Sometimes we had to, underline this, search fearlessly. What's that sound like? Inventory. But he was there. He was as much as a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us, and I circle that, and that's God. Capital W, capital G, capital R, you know. The great reality deep down within us. On the inside. In the last analysis, it was only there that he may be found. It was so with us. Last stop on the block, man. After I'd given up on all my ways, because everything I tried every human power I tried was all my ways. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it that way. Until I finally let go and was like, okay, man, God, I need you. All right, I'm ready. And it was the last stop on the block. Thank God I was alive, to be able to do that, because some of us don't get that opportunity. We can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony, if what I'm telling you helps sweep away prejudgment, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. It's open for all of us. That's what the whole program is about. We're trying to invite you into the world of the Spirit so you can be helpful and useful and beneficial and a demonstration to other people. Oh my gosh, we ain't trying to set you up, man. Ain't nobody trying to set nobody up. With this attitude, you cannot fail. You can't fail. I circle that because that's a beautiful attitude to have. It's telling me if a testimony helps sweep away prejudgment, enables me to think honestly and encourage me to search diligently within myself, then I can join the broad highway. And with that attitude, I cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. And I circle, or I underline come to you. I actually got that whole thing highlighted, but I underline come to you. And then I wrote next to it, don't have to look for it. It's sure to come to me. In this book, you will read the experiences of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Journey from the mind to the spirit, man. His change of mind was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Our friend was a minister's son. Now, this story is on 208 of your big book. It's called Our Southern Friend. This is the guy we're talking about, so it's a real story. This is the truth. The guy was, his story is our Southern Friend on page 208. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school where he became rebellious at what he thought an overdose of religious education. For years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble. Now, check out his condition. Check out his condition, just like in the doctor. All the other conditions of everybody else before this, check his condition out. He was dogged by trouble, frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, and suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Embittered, depressed, fatal calamity, insanity, business failure, total frustration, all that stuff. Post-war delusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction. Brought him to his knees. What a good place to be. It sucks when you're there, but what an amazing place to be when somebody has that much desperation and is finally just giving in and saying, I'm done. It was only that I died that I was able to live. One night, when confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Hopefully that's who you're being approached by. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, if there's a God, he ain't done nothing for me. But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question, just like I did it that day in prison, man, when he told me that. Is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came and it crowded out all else. Who are you to say that there is no God? They took us to church. Another description, another experience that I had. They took us to church while me and Crystal were in the facility, the rehab we were at, and at my greatest friend Eddie, Mahan. He passed away. He got murdered. My friend Aaron, that my childhood friend, was gone. I was just like in the church, and I'm sitting there, and like I had all these different conceptions of what God was. I had studied Islam. I had studied science, astrology, different religions, Catholicism. I mean, you name it, and I studied it until the point of like I studied myself in unbelief and started praying to the dark side, straight up. And I remember I went to church because I just wanted to get out of the rehab, and I'm there, and this man up there was speaking, the pastor, and there's thousands of people in this church that I go to, and I remember him speaking to me. He spoke to me. Everybody else disappeared, and I swear he talked about all the stuff that I was studying and how it was counterfeit, and don't do this, and this is the way. And then I remember I had an experience with God before, and like he was just like telling me, and I felt like he was talking to me, and I remember just starting to cry, and Crystal grabbed my hand because she was still alive at the time, and she grabbed my hand, and I'm crying, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. And she was like, what, babe? And I was like, and she said, is it Eddie? And I was like, yeah. And I just felt like this, grace and mercy. Like I can't, it's the only way to describe it is I felt this grace and mercy of like my friends are gone and yet I'm still here, and they were much better people than I was, and it wasn't like this self-pity, my friends are gone thing. It was like I felt chosen. That's the only way I can describe it, is I felt chosen, and I felt like I knew I was forgiven and I didn't deserve it. And I just looked around, and I wasn't Christian, and I wasn't like following any religion or any of that stuff. At this time, I had, studied my way out of belief. And I looked around the room, and I seen all these people with their hands in the air, praising God and happy, tears streaming down their face of joy. And I remember just having my hands in the air, looking at them, and I was just like, and I didn't believe that they were right, but I said, I don't even care if they're wrong. I completely let go of self and said, I don't even care if these people were wrong. I chose that day God, what my conception of God was going to be, and I knew He chose me, and I was like, I'm going this way. And that was just it. That's how I made my choice, That's how my conception of God came up. I felt it, and I didn't even care if the people were wrong. I just wanted to believe like they believed. Who are you to say that there is no God? Nobody. This man recounts that he tumbled out of his bed on his knees. That's what happened to me. I fell on my knees that day. In a few seconds, he was over. Me too. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by the conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built, just like I did that day, the barriers that I had built through the years were swept away. What's that sound like? That's some step 4 inventory stuff. He stood at the presence of infinite power and love. He stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his Creator, not his conception. I moved from my conception to my companionship with Him, to a willingness to believe, to I'm going to build a relationship with Him. Thus was our friend's cornerstone. We talked about the cornerstone already and how important a cornerstone. If any of you know about masonry, the cornerstone, if it's out of place or off a little bit, the whole building is off. That wall is done. His cornerstone, which is just the first stone, was fixed in place. No later vicissitude, like no other problem or condition has shaken it. His alcoholic problem was taken away. His alcoholic problem was taken away. That's what happens to us. Where all of a sudden, and sometimes I don't even realize that all of a sudden I'm not thinking about using every second and every day, or plotting and scheming on how I'm going to get something into a rehab, or even in prison where I couldn't stop. What can I do? I got to do something. It was taken from me. There was nothing I could do to give that up. There was nothing I could do to give it to you. It had to be taken from me. And who can do that? I've been to rehabs, I've been to detoxes, I've been to sober homes, I've been to therapists, I've been to counseling, I had wives, I didn't have no wives, I had women, I had success, I had money, I studied, right? I had education, I had all those things, and none of that took that away from me. But God took it from me. It was taken from me. Thank you. That very night, years ago, it disappeared. It's my story. Save for a few brief moments of temptation, which happened, the thought of drink has never returned. And at such times, a great revulsion has risen up in him, where I'm like, just like we talked about in the beginning, smoke crack or go home, you got work in the morning. If I'm smoking crack, going home, you got work in the morning is not popping up. And if it is, it's like, that's a ridiculous idea. Smoking crack isn't the ridiculous idea. Going home, I got work in the morning is the ridiculous idea. I'm getting high right now. And then it switches. I have the psychic change. God takes the desire from me, where all of a sudden, go home, you got work in the morning. And if the thought comes, smoke crack, it becomes, that is the ridiculous thought. It's easily manageable, and a revulsion comes up where, like, that is ridiculous. F that. And God has enabled me to remember the consequences and the truth about the consequences, and not the lie and just one. You just do one. Thank you, man. Thank you, God, for all this, man. It's unbelievable. The thought of drink is never returning. At such times, a great revulsion has risen up in me and was like, this is not a good idea. And the Spirit, right? The great revulsion, the Spirit let me know this isn't a good idea. And this time I'm able to listen. I'm not ignoring it because I'm spiritually awake. Seemingly, he could not have drank even if he would. God has restored his sanity. To see the truth about the consequences. God does that. That's why they say we're miracles. And when you walk in the room and it sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo bullcrap, when they say that you're a miracle, and if you lost the desire to use, you are a miracle is bestowed on you, because we could not stop. And even when in jail, and when all the consequences are right in my face, I still couldn't stop. What is that but a miracle of healing? There it is right there. That is the miracle. Yet its elements are simple. This is funny stuff. Circumstances made him willing to believe. The circumstances. Yeah. Nothing else worked. I'm beaten, broken, hopeless. Let's check out the Southern Friends circumstances. Dogged by trouble, frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide, calamities, immediate family, embittered, depressed him, post-war delusionment, ever more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse, brought him to the point of self-destruction. Let's go to this dude. Trembling, despairing, nervous wreck, emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance. This dude, let's talk about this one. His problem so complex, desperation so great, depression so great, he felt the only hope will be through moral psychology. He made his own diagnosis, hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. I mean, yeah, man. Circumstances, man. Circumstances made me willing to believe. I have died so many times, I lost count. My heart stopped so many times I've lost count. I spent so many years in my prison, I can't believe even now that I'm capable, or was capable at the time, of doing that. And now I know all that stuff. Everything, just like in a 9th step, I see how my experiences can benefit others. No matter how far down the scale I've been, no matter how many times I OD, no matter how many times I spent years after year in prison, no matter how many people I hurt, I see how my experience can benefit others. Circumstances made him willing to believe. My circumstances were I had nothing left. He humbly offered himself to his maker. Then he knew. And that's what happened to me. If you're asking, what happened to that guy? That's what happened to me. Circumstances put me in a position and beat me into a state of reasonableness to believe, and put me in this position where like I finally offered myself humbly, offered myself to my maker, and I knew. Even so has God restored all of us to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly. But he has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. All I have to do is make an effort and say, I'm stepping away from the crowd, which is what I tell my guys all the time. Like you can hang with the crowd and move with the crowd and fit in, or you can move with God and stand out, you know? And what an amazing thing to be, man, is stand out and just like being able to work and not trying to stand out on no ego stuff. I stand out and don't even try it, man. You know, we stand out because we're helping people, and the people that drive by, you know, the selfish and self-centered people. Not saying everybody does this because we drive by people all the time, but some people drive by this person, right? And the same person I drive by, I stop and ask them if they need something to eat, you know? And I let my spirit guide me on that stuff, man. Some people grow into it more slowly, but he has come to all those who honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us. Bottom of the page, I write two things, two definitions. You got spiritual experience. I'll give you a second. Cool thing about Facebook Live stuff is you can go back and review it. You can go back and review all the stuff we've done prior in the book to this point. You just go search my name in this Facebook page that we're on, and then you'll see all the big book studies pop up. So even so, God has restored us, right? So spiritual experience happens suddenly. And then you got spiritual awakening. And then you got a nice big space down here for the definitions. Spiritual awakening happens slowly over time. Spiritual experience happens suddenly. Spiritual awakening happens over time. So, what is it? Oh, 5, 6. So on page 567, let's go to 567 and I'll explain. It's only a page. So even though our southern friend had a white light experience, Bill had a white light experience and stuff like that, that's by far what we're talking about is necessary for you to have this white light experience, although it does happen. I can't say it happened to me because it took me 26 years to get back to the belief in God. So spiritual experience, and we're on page 567. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet, it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression, which we don't want to give you, that these personality changes of religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals, like immediate stuff. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. It's not true. It happens over time. This is what we're talking about. And for some of us, in the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described, right? We just said that. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire immediate and overwhelming God consciousness. It started to happen over time. The more I listened to that thing inside, the louder it got. Followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. It happened to me. Most of our experiences are what psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Other people start to see it before you see it. They're like, yo, man, son, what's going on with you? Before you even notice it, people are saying, yo, man, like, you're changing. He finally realizes, educational variety, because it develops slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. I just said that. We finally realize that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life. He starts to see it like, yeah, I'm not like acting the same, man. In this situation that happened to me before, and I acted like this every time. Now all of a sudden I'm not. That such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. We're talking, and even here, we're not talking about a doorknob, a group of drunks. We're talking about we're tapping into an inner resource. Power greater than ourselves. Most of us think that this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of a spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, most in a forceful way, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial of a power. Sit. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. So much for the, check this out, willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness. A lot of, we got the how it works, and we think how means honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, but here, it's not the how, it's the who. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness, because none of us were like super honest when we came in. But we had to be willing, first of all. Are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. So there is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance, to try to show something that is actually evidence in other people's lives and try to prove it not possible when it's impossible to prove that God is not possible. Let me just give you a hint. Ignorance, that principle is contempt prior to investigation. So do your investigation and before you start saying, I don't believe in that. You don't have to believe as another person believes, but you better get to God, however that is, man, and know that he's real. So, cool, we'll stop there. Saturday, we'll start on chapter 5. Ooh, chapter 5, how it works. And we're about to go into some third step stuff, man. And you know, if you already know, cool. You know what happens right after the third step. We're going to launch into some inventory. We're going to break some good stuff down, man. And thank you for joining me. God bless y'all. Have a good night.